Hello and welcome to the first Conversations Hoping to Create Change, or rather, Creating Change. My guest today is the incredible Christine Agro, who's joined us all the way from New York. Christine, thank you so much for taking out the time. I know you have so much going on with a new book and workshops in Arizona, and for you to take out a little bit of time to chat with us on such a loaded subject. I can't wait to share you and this information with everyone else. For those of you who have only heard me talk and rave about Christine and share her information through our group and through the summit, here is Christine Agro. If I go into her very long list of accomplishments and her resume, we'll be here till tomorrow, and her, if you care about things like this, very long list of celebrity clients, animals as well as people, we'll be here till next week. What I love about Christine and why I'm so keen on having her be part of anything that we do is there is no one else like her. I love to say that Christine is the Elon Musk of spirituality, or rather Elon Musk is the Christine Agro of technology. Christine is a clairvoyant, but not a clairvoyant in the way that people understand clairvoyance. Like if you're thinking she's going to come out in flowing robes with... I've lost her for a second. Flowing robes and like a crystal ball, and she's going to future tell, you're going to meet tall, dark stranger at the corner of 18th and 7th. It's not going to happen. That's not how she works. What makes Christine unique is that she used her ability to clearly see energy. So she's a metaphysical and a spiritual authority in a way that I have in my 20 years of being a seeker, of reading authors, following gurus. Not gurus in a conventional way, but people like the Dalai Lama or Dzongkar Rinpoche or Daisaku Ikeda, various people who are very well known for their information, for their level of enlightenment and compassion. I find that Christine has an ability to use her ability to clearly see. So you could go to her with a problem in business, you could go to her with a problem in relationships, in your own spiritual life path, and have her give you the most incredible tools, the most incredible insight. And my most favorite thing about her is she has no interest in being a guru. So she has no interest in you putting her up on a pedestal and saying, Christine is my guru and I will do whatever she tells me to do. One of my favorite things and the most frustrating things about working with her or studying with her is her whole goal is to empower you. So she will teach you tools, she will give you insight, that you can find your own information. So one of the most frustrating things with me as her friend and her student and a great fan of hers is when I'll ask her, just tell me what to do. And she'll be like, no, you have the tools, you have the information, you decide, you choose, you look. And in the beginning, I used to just be like, okay, I get it. And she used to say to us, I'd say, thank you. And she'd be like, no, thank you. She's completely about empowering you to find your own information, to stand in your power, to be enlightened, to be the best version of yourself, to fulfill all your dreams. And I'm so blessed that she's doing this first, very shaky technologically, because I'm nervous about this technology, not because she is.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, great. I had the power went out here. And so I'm on my cell phone, but I can't see you. I can only see me. So
okay, that's good. Yeah, I can see you. People on Facebook can see you, and we have the recording. Awesome. I'm just so happy that you're here. Welcome to the first conversation.
I am so honored to be here, and so thankful that you asked me to join you for this exciting step in everything that you're creating. It's just really great. So congratulations to you and the Women of India Summit. And I think Conversations That Create Change is a wonderful space and a great topic. And I can't wait to see what you do with it. So I'm also trying to get my computer to start behind me. So multitasking. What?
Will you explain to especially our newbies and people who don't do this kind of work, what happens with technology when we start to do things that have impact?
Oh, Divya and I blow up technology all the time. And it's really, I think, because everything is energy, right? So it goes back to that. And I know that's sort of like a sort of cliche-ish, sort of like a concept that's out there and people say it a lot, but it's actually really true. Everything is energy. And so, when we're starting to create change and we're starting to shift things and we're going to, whether it's in our own life or it's for other people, the energy gets activated and charged. And then if we're dealing with technology seems to be highly susceptible to it. So, we get bumped off of calls, our line drops, all sorts of things. So when I'm working with people, and particularly students and new students coming into class, I always say, just laugh, right? just laugh about it, because you can't control it. So I've gotten really adept at just being like quick on the fly. Like, it's like, okay, the power just went out. Great. Let me get my cell phone. And it's, it's always like 1,000 steps. I had to download an app. I had to do all these things, but it's like, if you really want to do it, then you'll find a way to be there. So here I am.
Yay. No, because I've noticed this. When we did the summit, when we've done the summit, we've always had issues with technology, and not only with technology here. I remember interviewing Srimoy Piukundu, who's one of our speakers and an author, at her book launch. And every time we would try to speak, I think we had 7 mics between us, and they would just not work. And finally, I had to explain to the audience that this is what happened when powerful women get together and start talking about things that matter.
It's really true. I mean, especially if you're going to be talking about things that are, contrary to the norm, that are going to sort of shake people's pictures up and get their lessons, sort of moving and shifting. And so, yeah, it's like that energy that gets in the way. That's like, well, how much do you want to share this?
And one of the biggest things I've learned from you, it's not trite, but it's actually something you've taught me a long time ago, and we do this in class and when we work with other stuff together, is when things start to go wrong, that's when you'll hear both of us laugh the most, because you've always said that amusement is the highest energy and it's the quickest way to shift it.
It definitely is, yeah.
So people who will be following us, just know when Christine and I start laughing, it's because something's happening, besides the fact that we just love chatting with each other.
Me too. So thank you again for having me here. I'm so excited for everything that you're creating.
Oh, thank you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about conversations that create change. When Mudita and I started the Women of India Summit, we have had so many people from so many different parts of the world write to us, from Pakistan to Singapore to Jakarta. We've had emails saying, bring it to us, bring it to us. And I was wondering why that was. And I realized it's because the subjects that we picked, whether it was relationships, body image, power, money, masculinity, boundaries, intimacy, these are all universal subjects and universal themes that everyone responds to. And the thing with doing a summit is you're so challenged and limited by logistics. And this technology allows us to have people like Christine, who are in the States, or somebody else, to come in and have a quick chat with us and teach us about something that we all want to know. And one of the things that I've noticed in my own practice when I'm dealing with clients is that whether you're talking about money, you're talking about branding, you're talking about marketing, you're talking about anything, eventually it comes down to relationships with other people, relationship with ourselves. And that's why when we both decided to do this, it was obvious that our first chat was going to be on relationships and why the hell are they so challenging? So why are they so challenging?
Is that me? Oh, over to me. Well, it comes down to sort of like the 101 space of my, my information and what I teach, and at the root of why we're here. So before we're a woman, before we're part of a culture, part of a religion, part of a society, before we have a passion and purpose, before all of those things, the reason that we come here is to learn, to heal, and to grow as conscious beings. And so the way that we do that, particularly when we are not And I'm going to say not conscious, and I don't mean like, you're not not aware, but when you're not conscious to your spiritual journey in this way, the way that we learn our life lessons is through adversity. It's like it's the only way, or it's the best way that as humans we listen. Right? We don't listen unless something is really uncomfortable, unless something is irritating us, and unless something is pushing us to create change. We don't necessarily step up and listen. So in that unconscious space, the way that we learn those life lessons is through our relationships. And so, what you might find is that you have areas of your life where the relationships are really smooth and flowing, and then you have another area of your life where the relationships are really challenging. And just to walk it back a minute, everything is a relationship, which is just like, right? Right? We have a relationship with money, we have a relationship with people, we have a relationship with our workspace, we have a relationship with, if we have a business, the business itself is a relationship. We have a relationship with every person that's on the planet, whether we know them or not. We have a relationship with our country, with our culture, with our government. So it's all relationships. So how you have chosen as a spiritual being to work on your life lessons, it comes out in some aspect of relationship. So it could be your relationship to money. It could be your relationship to somebody in your family. It could be through your intimate relationships. It could be through the work that you do, and that's where your challenges exist. So that's the starting point. I'll turn it back over to you, Divya.
Starting about, do we have a relationship with anything? I remember you saying to us once when you said this thing that you have a relationship to everything, like your relationship to money is a relationship. I remember that blew my mind, because I was like, that makes complete sense, because we all know people who have one area of their lives that's really smooth, like either it's their finances or their romantic life or their family life. And there's some relationships, some areas that are just, it's just so challenging. And what I've noticed is, I'm sure everybody listening has had an experience of this, is when you could move continents, you could move countries, you could move jobs, but you still keep repeating patterns. You meet you're dating your 16-year-old boyfriend again and again, and he shows up in different ways, or you have a boss,
right,
an abusive teacher from school, or you have a disappointing relationship with someone in your family, and then you meet people who they may be completely different physically, in every other way, but they make you feel the same way. So right. What's under that?
So that's really the lesson that you're trying to learn, right? That's the piece. And I do often say that to people when, I'll see somebody jump from job to job to job, and really what they're moving away from is the lesson that they're trying to learn. And what they're looking for is the answer to that lesson. But the answer always is within us, right? It's not outside in some other outside experience. So for me, I've boiled it down to 3 core life lessons that we're all working on in one way or another. One is self-validation. So when we're looking at self-validation and we're trying to learn that, we may be challenged in our relationships with people not recognizing us, not seeing us, not appreciating us, not quote unquote giving us, the respect or the due that we feel like we deserve. If you're experiencing any of that, that's all about learning to validate yourself. Because when you're in a space where you are expecting somebody else to validate you, you have to give your power away. You have to give something up in order for them to give you that sense of validation. So everything that we're working towards is this ability to be fully present as spirit in our own body, which means self-validated, fully empowered, and standing in our truth. So if you're noticing any of that, that's the lesson that you're working on. The second one is standing in your power, which may show up as people challenging you, right? People creating barriers for you to succeed, people creating obstacles that you have to step over in order to have what it is that you want, or people taking your power away from you. So like in a personal relationship where anything that you have actually comes from somebody else, right? So that's a space of feeling as if your power is held by somebody else. And then standing in your truth. And I look at standing in your truth in a couple of different ways. So there is that ability to speak your truth. So what is truthful to you? What comes from deep inside of you? So not just telling the truth, right? So that's kind of different. But I think it's connected. But also standing in your truth of who you are as a spiritual being. So like for me, and oftentimes people who are on a spiritual path will be sort of like the black sheep of the family. Right? They'll be the odd one out because they see things differently. They look at the world differently. They approach the world differently. And all the rest of the family operates in a certain way. And then there you are operating in this other kind of way. And so you end up being in this space, and oftentimes it does come from the family, where you are challenged to stand in that truth. Can you hold it? Can you be it? Can you really be who you are and not lose it in the face of whatever's going on? So those are the 3 core life lessons that we start off with. And as you evolve and step into awareness, there's a couple other ones that pop into place. But those are the primary ones. How'd I do, Divya?
You did really well. That was very succinct. Thank you. I'm approaching this from a large percentage of our audience being here in the subcontinent, and my question to you is that the easiest play for women as a general way to go to is someone is doing this to me. I'm the victim here, and what I've learned over time working with you and finding my own information is that when you sit in that space of someone is doing this to me, it's a very disempowering space, because then it's almost like you have no power, and you sit in that Cinderella story of they did this to me and I need someone to rescue me. So someone who's just nascent to this work, is just starting out. I call you the Elon Musk of spiritual work, not lightly, because you're so far ahead of any other author that I've encountered. It's true, It's even going to be printed, so you can't, like, once it's been written and printed, you can't argue with it. But for someone who's nascent to this work and is just starting out, and they're navigating a troubling relationship or 5, what is the first step or a simple tool that you could give them to start approaching it differently? Because the easiest place to go to is this asshole is doing this to me, right? This person's doing this. And they're being inconsistent to my needs, to my feelings, to where I'm drawing boundaries.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, it's just, I think it's important to recognize that we are giving our power away when we sit in that space of someone is doing it to us. And it doesn't mean that they're not doing something, right? I'm not saying that the person isn't being a jerk and isn't creating problems and trouble for you in your life, but it's how you accept it, how you see it, how you interact with it that makes a difference in your own growth and how you move forward. So the first thing I think is to really start to recognize the dynamics, right? Think about the 3 things that I just mentioned: self-validation, standing in your truth, standing in your power. You can look at every relationship that you have and ask yourself, what am I working on here, right? And it may not just be one thing, right? It may be all 3 things. It may be 2 of the things. Sometimes they feed into each other. You might think it's one and then realize later, like, oh, it's actually this as well. So you start there by just looking at what is it that I'm working on here, and then as you start to see it, you can start to choose: are you going to engage this energy or not? right? Because that's a choice. You don't have to engage it. You don't have to respond to it. You don't have to step into it. You don't have to react to it. It's your choice. And you'll notice that, you know, if you start to choose to not engage it, it will create ripples around you, because the people who are used to because what they do is they get energy from you when you react and respond, right? So you're giving your energy away. And again, it goes back to this piece about, you know, where do you get your validation from? And oftentimes we learn to get our validation in negative ways. That's learned over time through our families, and, you know, particularly when we're young. I think about, I don't know if it's like this here, you know, in here, I'm here with you, Divya. I don't know if it's like this where you are growing up, but here, you know, oftentimes our families are so busy that the only time that we get that nurturing that we're looking for, which is really validation, is when we get sick. And so we learn to get sick in order to be validated. And you can just see, you know, the cycle that creates, right? It's like in order to be validated, you have to get sick, and you just keep going back and forth. So the key is to learn to validate yourself. And it, you know, that, so anyway, I think I kind of got off track there, but.
No, it's good. Because I was going to ask you, you're a mom, you have a teenager. Like the whole time you were talking, I was thinking, I wish they taught us this in school, like instead of all the half the nonsense that you don't remember. Especially in India, the public schools education system is such, it's just more of you mug things up, you write that down in an exam and they pass. You pass or don't, depending on how able you are to mug things up, as opposed to experientially finding your information, learning to experience things. You're a mom and you have a teenager now. What are I was thinking I would love to have this taught in schools, like learn how to navigate. You know, in India, and especially in convent private schools, you had moral science classes, or value education classes, which were basically just classes on education and some degree of Christian teachings. You know, that I went to a private convent school, and that's what I remember learning. And I was thinking, I wish someone had taught me this. If I knew how to self-validate, what are one of the simple tools that you have used with your son to teach him how to navigate difficult relationships or to do self-validation? Because I think that's
the self-validation piece I really, really adored, because, of course, you know, I was very conscious of not being the source of his validation. Not that I don't celebrate him, but not being the source of his validation and teaching him to validate himself. So when he, you know, from very early on, and he would come to me with things, what I would say to him is, oh, that's really great. You must be so proud of yourself. So that he recognized that it was, you know, him, the pride and the joy was within him. And I would, of course, celebrate him as well. So, you know, now he's 14 and he'll say to me, oh, I'm really proud of myself. Like he, you know, he gets it. So that's really kind of sweet. And then in terms of navigating relationships, you know, it is just, I've always asked him, you know, what do you think you're working on there? Whenever he's come to me with, you know, any kind of situation that he feels really is really hard for him, or is really challenging him. So, you know, I think obviously, like, I got a conscious child because I am conscious, right? You know, I think, you know, we paired up nicely. And so we've always had these really, really deep and interesting conversations, even from very early on. And now that he's a little older, they're even more interesting. So when I have them, because now he's a little bit like, he's a bit of a teenager, and that's okay, because you know what? And when we're talking about relationships, the teenage years are about creating individuation. They're about separating from your parents. So some of the reasons that parents have such a hard time with their kids during their teenage years is because they're not letting go. They're still holding on to the control. And really, this is a time, this is sort of like, you know, training wheels for adulthood. And teenagers need to be learning how to be a grown-up. And if the parents are holding on so tightly that they're not giving them that space to grow, then you end up with that friction, because the only way that the child can step into that individuation is by adversity, right? Is by creating the friction to create change. So, we can make it a lot easier on ourselves if we just start to let the line out and give them the room to, let them know that you're there, and give them the room to explore and grow in the way that they need to. So I'm actually finding this age really interesting, and his reaction really interesting, because he has preconceived, I think probably from watching TV shows, he has these preconceived ideas of how I should be reacting and responding to things, and of course I'm not. And he's like, "Oh, that wasn't the reaction I expected." And I always say to him, "You should know better by now."
It's not to do a documentary, Keeping Up with Christine. Okay, I have a question. I would love for the audience, anyone who's watching, to jump in and say if they felt this too, because our normal response to adversity in relationships or difficult relationship is to want to leave them. Say I, if you agree, that most people just want to that's why we break up, right? We break up with partners, we break up with jobs, we break up. I mean, families are harder because you can't export them to Mars, as I like to say. I used to be very zen and Buddha-like about relationships. People I didn't have difficult relationships with, I would always I don't wish them ill, but I would really love for them to be the first family to populate Mars. Whenever Richard Branson, Elon Musk decides how we're getting there and we have a space station, we should be the first lot of people to go. So what do you do? Can these relationships heal? And are some relationships just beyond healing? Some difficulty?
Well, I think, it's important to go back to what are you working on, and focusing on learning your own lessons. What I know is that there are some relationships that it's kind of like a leapfrog action, where you take your steps forward and then they catch up. And so you're always in that space where you move forward, and then the people in your life, whether it's intimate or family or whatever it is, they catch up to you, and then you're it changes the dynamics, but you're in a new space. So that is possible. And then there's also just the relationship spaces where you've you've learned what you needed to learn with that person or those people, and then it's time to move on. That old saying, or I don't know if it's old, I'm not sure where it came from, but there's people in your life who are there for a moment, whatever it is, something in a lifetime. It's that kind of, right? It's that kind of, sorry?
Reason, a season, a lifetime.
Yes, you say it so much better. So, it's the thing to always be looking at is looking at yourself, not at them, right? Not wanting them to change, but looking at what you're doing in your life and how you are creating your own, how you are moving forward with your own growth. That's the key there. If you're in their space trying to heal them or fix them or make them see something, we can't do that. We can't do somebody else's work for them. We can't learn their life lessons for them. And really, the shift that happened around 2012 was a move away from healers doing that, right? Channeling the energy, cleaning the energy of people through their systems to a more conscious space of recognizing that if we do the work within ourselves, then it gives people the space to do the work for themselves. They see it, and then they have a choice. Do I want to do this differently, or do I want to keep doing it the way that I'm doing?
So much of it comes down to your own relationship with yourself as well, right? It comes down to how you want to experience this relationship, and you have the choice. Someone could be having crazy drama or on their end, and you could be like, okay, I see you doing that, but that's not how I see it, and that's not how I want to work through it, right?
Right. And also, they can have their own pictures that they're seeing through. So, they may project or see you in a certain way that is not how you see yourself. And it is all about staying in your own space, right? It's all about staying in your own in your own circle and letting people have whatever it is that they have going on, and remembering that you're not going to change them, right? You are not. You can say things, you can offer information, you can show examples, but at the end of the day, it's that person that has to change in their own space. So, my favorite, well, maybe not my favorite, but it's as somebody who's energetically sensitive, I always find it fascinating when people say like, "Oh, you're too sensitive." My response now is maybe you're not sensitive enough. Right? And so it's like, it's okay. Like, I'm okay with who I am. If it bothers you, then that's something that you need to look at, right? If me pointing out to you that something that you're doing is, hurtful to me, or that I don't like it, or it doesn't resonate with me, if that bothers you, I'm not really sure what to say, because I'm telling you how that makes me feel, right? And to come back with like, you're too sensitive, I find to be actually kind of a funny response now.
I like that. I'm going to keep that one. We have a question from one of the audience members. Would you take one?
Sure, absolutely.
So someone is asking, I can't see who, what's a tool we can use to stay in your own space? How do you even define your own space in this scheme of relations? Especially because, at least here in the subcontinent, I'm quite sure it's not very different from you, but here we live at home. You never leave your family of origin. You marry and then you move into someone else's home, live with their family. So how do you know where do you define your space, and what's a tool you can use to?
I mean, it's always interesting for me to look at different cultures, and what goes on. It's funny because I was in a conversation on Facebook, and somebody had posted about the interesting dynamic of people crying on public transportation, and how that's something that city dwellers here in the States can encounter. And I said, yeah, that is interesting, because in the suburbs you cry in your car, right? And usually you're by yourself, and you might drive up to like the light and people are looking and you're kind of like, But how in the city there's this sort of natural, there's almost like people recognize that, and they give you the space. They stay in their space. They let you be in your space, and nobody's like in your space going like, are you like, usually, I mean, there's our, compassionate or empathic people who might be like, hey, are you okay? But they're not like in your space, right? They're not invading your space and getting up in what's going on, especially if you're like, yeah, no, I'm fine. So it's interesting when we talk about space. I think we acknowledge space all the time. We just might necessarily not think about it. Our auric field is that energy field that is around us. If you put your hand out in front of you, it's an arm's distance away, and it basically creates like an energy bubble around you. And we hear it in our language when people will say like, get out of my space, or you're in my space. What they're really saying is like, you're energetically bothering me, right? Yeah. You're energetically annoying me. So, a couple of tools for learning how to hold your space. I do think it's really helpful to call your energy back from wherever you have left it. And it's a simple thing. You can just close your eyes and intend that it comes back. If you like to use visualization, you can have like a magnet draw it back. And you want to bring that back into yourself, because we leave our energy everywhere. Especially like when we're unconscious to what we're doing. If we're worried about somebody, if we're thinking about something, we can project our energy into the future. We can send it into the past, and we just leave it all over the place. So we want to collect ourselves back up. And then you can imagine sort of healthy boundaries around you. I like to, on the outer edge of my auric field, I put the energy of compassion, so that when people come to me, they receive what it is that they want and need, but I don't have to do I'm not having to give anything out or change anything in my space. They just touch it or reach it, and they see it, and they get what they need, and then they can go away. So it's really about starting to recognize that. I think if you're I'm trying to think if there's another tool, and then just self-validation, right? So I talked about that a lot already. And for me, the way that I teach it is that we fill in with our own highest vibration. So close your eyes. You can imagine a pitcher, not a picture, but a pitcher, and just pour it into the top of your head, or let it absorb in through your heart, however you see it. And that will start to shift how you experience your own space. And then there's the yay me dance. Right? That's just really, validating yourself and celebrating yourself.
Christine, I could talk to you all day. We've got so many people here saying hello and saying you're the favorite person in the world. I'm so excited for us to continue this thing. We're kind of on the edge of our timeline.
Okay.
Can you share with people how they can find you, how they can reach out to you?
Sure.
Because we're next time, as we hit Diwali here in November, I really wanted to bring a couple of my speakers from the Women of India Summit and talk about the hottest thing that was talked about in all our summits is women and money. And Christine has an incredible approach to abundance, to wealth, to creating more. And I wanted to bring her on with some of our panelists like Monica Hallan, who teaches women how to invest money, to talk money. And I want to put these two in a room and get their brains and get them both to break down money for us. Christine approaches it from a metaphysical, energetic way, and exactly like she's talked about relationships. And Monica will talk about it from, okay, this is what you should be putting your money in, this is how you break money up, and this is how you create more. So I would love for Christine to just share her, where you can find her, social media handles, her website, etc. And go on.
Okay, so pretty much on social media, I'm at Christine Agro. Whether it's YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Come to Twitter on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, which is probably, if you're in India, is probably too early in the morning. But I do #conscious chat, and it's so cool. It's 5 questions to get you really digging deeper into a specific topic, and we just have a lot of fun. So if you just think about a really rich topic and you have 140 characters to talk about it and answer 5 questions, it's really a lot of fun. So there's that. And then if you want to sort of dig into this work a little bit, you can get a free copy of my book that I released in 2012 called 50 Ways to Live Life Consciously. And you can get it the URL is 50, it's the number 50, 50 Ways to Live Life Consciously.com. And it's free. So you just put in your information and you'll get a PDF. And then you can read about some of the stuff because it's in there. And then I have a new book coming out in November, which I'm super excited about. It's called Awaken and Grow, a practical guide for your spiritual journey. And it talks a lot about what our awakening is like and what you can expect and how to understand what's happening as you step into conscious awareness and conscious learning. So, and then my website is awakenandgrow.com.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you're so busy with your trip to Arizona next week and your book launch. Thank you so much for taking out this time.
No, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Divya.
And for our audience listening, we're going to have Christine back on a multiple, hopefully, issues, topics, anything from empowerment to relationships to conscious parenting to violence to abuse against women, which seems to be very rampant right now. If you have questions, if you have topics that you'd like us to cover, leave us a comment. Reach out to us through WomenOfIndiaSummit.com or divyachandra.com, and we'd love to hear from you. And if you have anything specific for Christine, please leave us a message. Thank you for joining us on our first Conversations to Create Change. We love sharing this space with you. Thank you and see you next time.